Hello, we are actually live, and this is the cool thing about StreamYard is that the platform that we're using, that might not mean anything to somebody who might be going, what's StreamYard? But the cool thing is you can choose whether or not you have a countdown, and I forgot about that, and so I haven't been using the countdown. I didn't use one today, and so here we are. You don't get any countdown at all. So we are live on the on Facebook in the various different, I say this because I normally say in the Flip Your Script place, but we're actually live in a whole bunch of different platforms and places. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have actually I'm going and taking on a different role. I'm actually hosting the Flip Your Script Friday, which by the way is a script flip. Because
we flipped the script on that.
Yeah, we flipped the script on that because normally Ilyse, of course, would be hosting, but here we go. I am hosting today, and I'm excited to be doing so. And I'm gonna introduce Ilyse, but I know that, of course, she's been here the last little bit, so obviously a lot of the people here would be familiar with Ilyse. But I want to introduce Ilyse because she's been doing the Flip Your Script for a little while, but I don't know that everybody knows exactly who Ilyse is. You know, you get to know snippets as she asks questions of other people, but they might not know who she is. And I said to her the other day, I said, I think it's time the Blue Talks community actually finds out a little bit more about Ilyse Rothman and the work that she does. So normally what I would do here is a full intro. As people know, I do it very personal and I wing it, but I would normally do a full intro, but we're going to be exploring that throughout. So it probably doesn't make sense for me to do the intro saying exactly what we're going to be talking about because we're going to uncover that anyway.
I'm so curious to know how this is going to unfold. I got my coffee. I'm like thinking it's going to be like a little coffee chat, you know?
Yeah, well, I'm curious how it's going to unfold myself as well. So I don't know either. But having said that, really, I think where I wanted to start, Ilyse, is to, obviously the people that have been following know that you are the amazing host of the Flip Your Script Fridays as part of the Blue Talk stage. But some of them may or may not know, depending on when they joined in on the Flip Your Script Friday, that you're also my co-host for the Blue Talks virtual event. And we do have another exciting one coming up in September. I'll say stay tuned. More details to be announced. I will say I just secured another really cool speaker. I'll give people a teaser. A gentleman named Dave Carroll. You may know him as the guy who United Airlines broke his guitar. And he wrote a song called United Breaks Guitars about that. And over 100 million people have heard his story. He's been featured on The View, 2020, CNN.
Wow.
And,
See, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
The reveal. Absolutely. This is the reveal.
100%. And then the second special guest we have coming on is a guy named Don Cody, who actually teaches the Think and Grow Rich practices. And since we talked about Think and Grow Rich so much, and since the Flip Your Script, the idea is talking about changing your thoughts to change your life, these are going to be two cool guests to come and join us. And I will tell one more teaser. I'm going to get Dave when he comes on to tell you how he got Wayne Dyer to endorse him to get a book deal with Hay House. So we'll talk about that when we bring Dave on.
Ooh, I have some questions for him, and I have some questions for him as well.
Awesome. Well, that's the teaser for what's coming up. But
I think we did chat about I'm also going to be one of the speakers for that week. Yeah. Which is kind of exciting to kind of have the different role in that experience as well.
Absolutely. You are so going to be the next one. And, I should say on the next one. And so we already pretty much have almost all the spots locked. Ilyse doesn't even know who a lot of the speakers are, so it's going to be surprising. So having said all that, I want to dive into today, though, where we have a limited amount of time. So, again, as I mentioned, Ilyse has been my host for the virtual event. We have another one coming up. She's been the main host for, and I'm going to add a preface to that, but she's been the main host of the Flip Your Script Friday. But she's had Emmy winner Tasia Valenza joining her recently. Just on its own, that's a pretty cool thing to know you're getting an Emmy winner every Friday by joining Ilyse on the Flip Your Script
Friday. Yeah, she's
Friday.
A great co-host. We work well together. Like our focus together is like really powerful. So it's nice. And she's a New Yorker too. And so we have like a lot in common. So we have a good little chit chat with our guests. And I do want to thank Scott McDermott, actually. I know that I'm the guest today, but I do like to thank the previous guests. And Scott was an amazing guest. His story is incredible. And you can actually find his interview in the archives on the Flip Your Script, Blue Talk's Flip Your Script experience page. So I highly recommend listening to the interview. He really shared incredible nuggets, or mind seeds, as I call it, that we can all plant in our lives on a daily basis. So I just wanted to say thanks, Scott, again, for being a great guest. So anyway, I just had to throw that in there.
Well, no worries. I love it. Great shout out as well. You've had some great guests already, and there's definitely more to come. I kind of get an inside scoop on some of the ones coming up. So yeah, big things coming. And so Ilyse, where I'd like to start is, first of all, can you, again, normally I would do this as an intro, but can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? Because I think that'll allow us to dive further into the work that you do.
Right. So, I mean, we are on a Flip Your Script Friday. So Flip Your Script is really a term that I came up with when I'm working with clients. I'm gonna go back to where this journey started and why changing thoughts to change our lives is so important and personal to me. At the age of 18, I found myself lying paralyzed in a hospital bed, very unexpectedly, with an autoimmune disease. It was crazy because really only a few days before, and I'm going to date myself, I was at a Grateful Dead show selling tie-dyes and dancing and enjoying my life, and had no inkling that anything that drastic was going to happen in my life. And I'm laying in this hospital bed, and the doctors and nurses come in, and they tell me that it could take years before I might walk again. And so words are powerful. It could take years before I might walk again. So that, to me, in and of itself, I was becoming physically paralyzed. It was a slow process. And now I'm becoming emotionally paralyzed, because just the thought of maybe walking again in a few years was really, really overwhelming. Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, at 18, right? Like deadhead, life is groovy. And something dawned on me as I'm laying there a few days, kind of just marinating this whole new perspective of my life, was that, wait a second, that's actually their perspective, which in turn was their reality, right? That was their vantage point. That's what they believed was going to happen. And I thought, well, I have my own beliefs, right? And I'm going to create my own reality. And I just got it in my head, or inspired action, or the universe, or something took over. And I decided that in 3 months, I was going to walk out of the hospital without physical therapy, without a cane, without a walker, without any help at all. And 3 months later, I walked out of the third hospital without a cane, without physical therapy. And it was like this huge gift. I'm almost going to cry, actually, but it was a huge gift, because I realized that, wow, my thoughts are so powerful, and they create this belief, and they're like magic, right? Like I set an intention, and it happened. And then what I realized, it's not only that my thoughts matter. Everybody's thoughts matter. Everybody's thoughts and beliefs, and the way that we think and the way that we speak has power, has healing power. And so through that journey, I've since now dedicated a lot of my professional life to helping people, what I call, tap into a life, their best life, by helping them release the chronic pain and struggle in their life, by recognizing that their thoughts, their beliefs, and their perspectives play a profound role in not only their emotional and physical health, but in their overall life. And so Flip Your Script is like, we're scripting our thoughts. We're scripting how we think and how we speak and how we believe. And if we were taught at a young age that our words were like our thoughts were like the paintbrush on this canvas of life, and that we came here to create, and that was the secret tool, we would be very intentional in the way that we think, very intentional in the way that we speak. But we're taught differently. And it goes back to childhood. I mean, there are layers, but the bottom line is that we have the ability to create the life that we love and love ourselves in. And it starts with thought. It's not only thought, but it has to start somewhere. And we have, as a culture, a very, very that negative thinking habits. We have bad thought habits, right?
Absolutely. Well,
so
and there's
breaking the negative thought pattern and intentionally recognizing, releasing, and restoring our lives.
So there's a couple of different points I'd like to jump off there, but I love that you shared that in terms of, why it's, first of all, your background, but then secondly, a little bit about where people struggle. And so, the first question I'll ask is this: have you ever heard, because I think sometimes it would shock people. I'm sure I could Google it right now, but have you ever heard any kind of numbers as to how many people suffer with chronic pain?
15 million or billion, I don't remember the number, but you could go to the CDC. There's millions and millions of people every single day are suffering with chronic pain. And I should probably let everyone know that I am a level 2 certified emotional freedom technique practitioner, and I'm working on my master's as well. And my focus is really the psychology of disease, right? The psychology of illness, and how we psychologically are able to recognize where the root of some of this old trauma, I call it emotional plaque. We have emotional plaque buildup, right? We have one negative thought as a child, and then as it builds and we start believing it, it becomes plaque. And when this emotional plaque builds up, we buffer. There's disease starts to manifest.
So I'm curious your thoughts on when it comes to pain. And, I'm going to be full disclosure here. I've struggled with pain a little bit off and on, but never to the, I've had a couple times where I overdid it and tweaked something and it nagged for 2 months or whatever, but I've never had I think with chronic pain is something that you have for months and months and years. Well, I shouldn't say it always is, but I'm sure that's what most people mean. And so I wonder, Ilyse, do you think there's a lot of people that have just come to accept that chronic pain is my normal?
Well, that's what they're told a lot of times, because autoimmune disease, right, is one of the primary sources of chronic pain, right? Fibromyalgia. Let's just use fibromyalgia as an example. And a lot of times the medical industry is very symptom-based, right? Medical industry looks at symptoms and diagnoses based on the symptom as opposed to the root cause. And so for somebody who's suffering with fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain disease, there's very little hope in the medical world. But autoimmune diseases at the root are very emotional diseases. And I'm going to try to share this with you as simply as possible, but let's just say that our body actually could speak to us, right? Let's just say our body had a voice. Well, where physical pain manifests in our body or shows up is actually letting us know where we may be emotionally stuck, emotionally trauma still kind of stuck in that area, whether it's old hidden hurts, right? Cancer, old hidden hurts and pain, feeling like we're not enough. Little bits of hidden anger is arthritis. So I've learned how to speak body. So when I have a client come to me in physical pain, we'll start to tell their story based on where their physical pain is, if that makes sense. So you can tell a story, somebody's emotional story, based on where their chronic pain lies. It's fascinating. So I've created actually a feeling to release or a symptom to release program for clients where we actually take their physical pain and let the pain tell us where maybe as a child you were told you weren't enough, or that you needed to sit down and be quiet, or you didn't feel that you were heard, or you didn't get the emotional support that you needed as a child. It's nobody's fault. We as parents do the best that we can, as you know, right, with where we are and what we know, but everybody's love language is different. So there's so many aspects to our emotional pain. And our mind and body is connected. It's scientifically proven. If you look at even a placebo effect, if you believe something enough, I believe that anything is possible when we believe it is.
So I don't know why this popped into my head, but I always like to go with what pops in at the time. You made me think of, I heard this in the past a couple of times, and I saw it online after I was told it. So I think it's true. And I don't mean like if it's online, it's true. I mean, like I went onto a medical site and it seemed to validate what the two doctors said. But which is really rare too, but I developed shingles in my 20s. And I know it's usually, everybody considers shingles like an older person's, thing. But, and for those that don't know, of course, I mean, it's their second wave of chickenpox, and I believe it can keep recurring for people. But the interesting part, at least, what I was told is when the shingles come in, they come in one spot, concentrated spot, versus chickenpox, which were all over your body. But what I was told was that they come back in the place where they first came as chickenpox. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes me think of what you were just saying about how the source of the problem typically is that, like, for example, what is it that if you have gut problems, it could be related to finances or something like that?
Well, that's lower back. Lower back is finance.
Okay, yeah.
Finance. But if we go to skin, let's go to skin issues. Can you tell that this is not real? I just moved it. Unless I'm really powerful, I'm just moving my brick wall.
That's impressive, by the way. That's the power of the mind. You believed you could move a brick wall and you did it.
Right. So shingles is skin issues. And a lot of times when people are having skin issues, there's something going on in their lives that they're itching to jump out of their own skin. Okay. And I know it sounds really, oh yeah, well, itching and jumping, ready to jump out of your skin. But there's also a spiritual component to skin issues. And shingles falls under that category. And it's about ready to get to the next spiritual level, like spiritual growth. It's almost like a growing pain, right? Remember when you were young and you had growing pains?
Yeah, absolutely.
So shingles and skin issues are a reminder or a message to us that we're ready to get to the next level of something, but we're feeling stuck and trapped within our own selves or in our own beliefs or in our own thoughts or in our own fears. And it's really hard to kind of like let that go and move into that next level. I don't know what was going on in your life at the time where the shingles popped up again, but it's really interesting to think about what's going on in my life right now. What was going on in my life when this started, right? And what could be the message in this physical response to my life?
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I didn't have that awareness at that age for sure, but at the same time, it's funny because when you mentioned like, what triggered this and what happened that was going on for me at the time, my lack of knowledge, because I'd heard of shingles, but I thought it was for somebody that was like 60 or 70. I just thought it was something that didn't happen when you were young. But it's funny because for probably about a week, I didn't go get checked out because I thought it was back pimples. I just thought it's weird. I have these painful pimples all in this one spot. Oh, well. And I guess the doctor said you shouldn't be able to walk right now, but he was basing it on, again, in fact, if you're 60 or 70, I'm sure your pain threshold is a bit different than if you're 20.
Right.
Even now, my pain threshold isn't as strong as it was when I was 20. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because I was sleeping on them every night. And he goes, you shouldn't be sleeping on those, and you shouldn't be actually able to sleep on those. They should be too painful. So, yeah. So anyway, just it's interesting we said that. But
well,
now,
when you have something physical come up now, ask yourself. Now, I have the book right here. With my clients, this is a great guide. You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And I'm not plugging her because I don't have any affiliation with Hay House right now. But there's a glossary in the back, which is really incredible. And basically what that does is it shows you what your physical symptoms are, what the emotional probable cause is, and an affirmation to help kind of shift, right? Flip your script, shift the perspective that you have around that old emotional negative thought, that old emotional trauma that happened in that area. So it's really fascinating how connected, our mind and our body are. We are the healers at the root of, the leading cause of a majority of physical illness is emotional at the root. And we're afraid as a society, emotional, no, I'm okay. If I have an emotional issue, then something must really be wrong with me. It's not that, it's physical. Even accidents. Why does something happen? It's a message. We always get messages. And when we become aware of these messages, so I have 3 steps: recognize, release, and restore. So you have to first recognize, get our eyes on our own paper and start becoming aware of how we're feeling in relationship to what's happening in our life. And then when the physical comes up, that's a gift. Okay, now I can stop for a second and I at least have an indicator. It's like a GPS tracking system that's built in.
Absolutely. Well, when you mentioned that, it's funny because I was just thinking, I think we have, was the one you showed, You Can Heal Your Life?
Yeah, I mean, I use this and I recommend it to my clients who I have a 90-day program, like I said, and we go through their symptom. It's a symptom to relief process, right? So that's a newer edition. This is one of the originals.
I just wanted to show, because if I said it's over on the shelf, somebody would say, yeah, sure it is, Corey. Easy to say that. So yeah, I think we have the old and new version over here. Obviously,
well,
Shelly.
that should be in your toolbox when something comes up. The first thing I recommend doing is figuring out what this physical message is trying to let me know. And see if it resonates with you, great. If it's totally off base, then it's not it, but it's the best place to start. And I guarantee you 98.9% of the time, it's like, whoa, that's so crazy. How'd she know?
So now one of the things I like that you said, and I'll explain why, is you said the leading cause. You didn't say the only cause, and I love that, and I'll explain why. So don't jump in and say, no, it's the only cause.
No, it's not. But it's definitely the key.
Well, the reason I say not the only one is I had this. I mentioned this to you before. I came in as a skeptic. I'm a believer, but I also I have to think some practical, because people can say, well, if you're saying it's always this, then this doesn't make sense. And so I had this Reiki master one time who was working on me, and I was saying I had a small pain in one place, and she said, well, what's going on? Let's say with your father or what have you. And so she was going by what the book would say or what have you. That's fine. But then she said, every single cause in the world of pain always is emotional. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense, because you're telling me I can hit myself with my hammer in my hand and it shouldn't hurt unless I have something emotional going on. And she didn't know how to answer that. But my point is,
yeah, I think that I get what she meant. But it's going to hurt.
Yeah, well,
pain is pain.
Well, and that's what I meant. Like what I said to her is, I said, there's going to be some people that come see you for Reiki the first time, and that's going to be too far for them. And I like I said to her, if you want to help them heal their pain, you got to at least talk somewhat practical, because again, they're going to think about, well, my car just ran into a brick wall. Of course, I'm going to have some pain, and you're telling me it's only emotional. Like I can, that back pain shouldn't have hurt or whatever. I mean, I get my hand cut off with a sword, but that shouldn't hurt I think you got to be practical. But I love what you said about leading cause, because those things I just said are obviously anomalies. You don't honestly usually hit yourself in the hand.
Right. Nothing's ever 100%. But I'm thinking like, maybe somebody doesn't know what an EFT practitioner is. So maybe I should explain that a little bit. And so basically, I'm like an acupuncturist and a psychologist. I'm not a psychologist, but like a psychologist with no needles. So basically what we do is we take acupressure points, tap on them, and what that does is it actually sends a surge like a needle would when you go to an acupuncturist, but we use the emotion that comes up, the frustration, the depression, the guilt, the shame, the anger, the blame, the list goes on, right? The jealousy, the resentment. There's a list, right? So behind the pain, like I'll always ask my clients. So anyway, I'm like an acupuncturist and a psychologist without the needles. And I help people who are really struggling in their lives. It could be chronic pain. It could be physical chronic pain. It could be emotional chronic pain. It could be struggling with their own self-worth. It could be struggling in their family, in their relationship with their husband or their wife. It could be struggling as a unit with kids right now, especially right now with the family being home. There's a whole new dynamic going on, and there's a lot of struggle that's happening. But underneath it all, parents and families want to become one, right? We want to connect. We want to grow happy families. We want to grow happy ourselves. So I'm able to work with clients, and it's a very simple 3 steps. We're recognizing what's going on. How are you feeling in relationship to the world? And also recognizing that this really has nothing to do with anyone else but you. Even if you're 9 years old or 8 years old, I know that sounds crazy. Even as a kid, a child has an opportunity, and it's the best time to learn at a young age between 0, 7, 8, 9, 10, that your voice matters. Who you are matters. And when we speak, it has a profound effect, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of those around us. So I work one-on-one on helping people recognize, especially parents, right? So parents will come to me and be, well, my kid's ADD, ADHD, and he's not paying attention in school, which is not an issue now, or at home. And the first thing I'll do is say, let's work together. And the one question I ask that changes everything is, so what is it about when you look at your child that you don't feel good? Like you don't like how it feels when you look at your child acting that way. So what you're telling me is you need your child to change because you don't like how you feel when you look at this. And they're like, whoa, I never really thought about it like that. So, and we walk around in the world needing politics to change and religion to change and somebody to wear a mask and not wear a mask, or like we need things to change because what happens a lot of times is we look at the world and then we decide how we're going to feel. And I don't like how I feel when I look at that, so I want that to change. So I help people to look at the world from the eyes of who they want to be. And what does that have to do with chronic pain, physical pain? Everything.
And so,
Everything.
and so for people that have been, I mentioned this earlier, so I'll full circle back, but for people that have been just accepting it as their normal, you know, and just accepting it as it's what has to be, I guess the two-part question. One, you mentioned you usually start sort of on the emotional side to see what's going on there, but is it in almost all cases that people can get rid of that chronic pain? And then the second part to the question is, when would they normally start seeing some relief from chronic pain?
Okay, so those are very loaded questions, by the way.
I know, it's a big question.
And so I'm going to tell you right now that while I am intuitive and I definitely have some gifts that doesn't have a title or a name. And as you know, we're always like, well, what do you do? I don't know. I just help people's lives. I help people tap into their best life. I don't care what their symptoms are. To me, those are side effects of a root cause, which is really recognizing one's value and recognizing that, you know, we are in this world to create the life that we love and love ourselves in, no matter what we were taught, right? So that's really the bottom line for me. And that's where Yum Life came about, which is the umbrella company all about living your best life, growing a life you love. Flip your script, keep it simple. If you don't like the thoughts that you're thinking, use what you don't like as a platform for what you do. If I don't like something, I don't want to plant that seed in my life. If I don't eat eggplant, which I don't, I would never plant seeds in my garden that grow eggplant. I promise you, because if I plant a tomato seed, I will never get a cucumber. And if I plant an eggplant, I'm getting an eggplant. So if you plant these negative seeds of thought in your mind, what we put our attention towards, we get more of whether we want it or not. I didn't make that up. It goes back to Think and Grow Rich. It goes back to Earl Nightingale's. It goes back, I mean, you can go way back. It goes back to Jesus, right? Like what we put our attention towards, we're going to get whether we want it or not. Okay, so I know it seems like I'm sidetracking, but I'm going to wrap this back around. When can people feel relief? I was speaking at a support group for fibromyalgia, people who are suffering and struggling with fibromyalgia. I do a lot of speaking. I'm a Blue Talk speaker, which we haven't really mentioned, but yeah. And so I was speaking at the support group, but I was having a little conversation before the group started, and a woman came up to me and said, so what you're saying is you don't believe in fibromyalgia? You don't believe the pain is real? And I looked at her and I said, listen, I said, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what I believe. I could believe that you could walk out of here after you've learned something new and recognized and released and restored, because I do a lot of live EFT tapping with my groups. I love clearing right there, interacting, clearing like on the spot. And you can feel instant relief. And I'll tell you a story about that as well. But I said, it doesn't really matter. Does it matter if I believe that you can walk out of here pain-free and never have pain again if you don't believe it yourself? What matters is what you believe. And if you believe that you're going to live in chronic pain for the rest of your life, you're probably going to live in chronic pain for the rest of your life. But if you believe that there's an opportunity here to maybe learn something about what's going on in your own life and start loving yourself a little bit more and believe that there's a possibility that you don't have to live in chronic pain for the rest of your life, then you're going to be right as well. Mm. So that's my answer to that, okay? Because it doesn't really matter what I believe. Absolutely. I mean, it does for me, but it doesn't for anyone else, because it doesn't matter if somebody believes that I'm so fabulous and awesome, right? If somebody believes you're awesome and you don't believe you're awesome, it doesn't really matter if they believe it. True story.
And so I guess that to circle back to that, then what you're saying essentially is it really depends on what they believe. You know, do they believe it's possible? Do they believe they can start feeling some relief soon.
Yes. Okay. So yes, there's an element of belief in it in the big picture. However, what I do ask of clients who are really ready, but they're just having a hard time believing that it's possible or that there's any more hope, they're obviously working with me one-on-one or coming to one of my talks or my support groups because they still have hope. So what I ask of my clients or of the group before we'll start doing a group clearing or even working one-on-one is, can you suspend your disbelief for the time that we're working together? You don't have to believe it, but if you can suspend the disbelief, that at least leaves a window or a door for receptivity. So somebody's more apt to say, I can suspend my disbelief for right now. And I'm always like, take your disbelief with you when we're done, because you don't need to leave it here. And what happens is that their pain levels go down. We always give it a number. There's two numbers for pain. It's the pain itself. Okay. And that we always do it on a 1 to 10 because it's really good to gauge. We want to go back, right? Scale of 1 to 10, but the work, and then there's also an emotional component to pain. That frustration, that hopelessness, that this sucks, I'm a victim. And that number is always higher than the pain itself. Mm. So there's two numbers that we always work with chronic pain. And then I can go back after our session. And I have all my clients record all their sessions because I learned my lesson. I work with a client, one of my first fibromyalgia clients years ago. We went through the 90-day program. Her chronic pain was gone, honestly, a little over 30 days. I mean, we continue to work together like, every 2 weeks or whatever, but within 30 days, 45 days, her chronic pain was completely gone. And it's an amazing program that I've created because I went through it myself. When I walked out of the hospital, but there was so much emotional pain that I still had and fear that was tied in. And every time I had an ache or a pain, I thought something was going to happen or I was going to become paralyzed again. I mean, it was a long healing process for me. And EFT really helped me to recognize where these emotions were showing up in my body. And that was the fear that was coming up that was causing a lot of my physical pain. And I became much more self-aware. So I went through this journey myself. And now I'm sharing this journey that I went through with my clients so they can get back into the driver's seat, right? And get back into growing their own life, creating their own life. It's not about relying on me or somebody else to help you, but I'm there to help you through this journey. I'm there to help my clients on this journey towards the life that they love, the best life that they can live.
So I love that. Oh, I think you froze for a sec. Were you finished or?
Yeah, I'm finished. I did want to wrap around though, because you said, how long does it take for pain to go away? So I do have another story that I do want to share. It was actually at a diabetes support group, because diabetes, actually the emotional component, okay, because I believe that, you walk hand in hand, is the inability to digest the sweetness of life. Somehow people are stuck in really embracing the sweetness of life. And a lot of diabetics have a certain archetype, not pointing fingers, who really cares what the reason is. If we could at least figure it out, I always say, it doesn't really matter. Let's just start there. The goal is to feel better. So the inability to digest the sweetness of life, that's diabetes. That's the sort of, yeah. So this woman, I would call people up. I love calling people up and like, just right there, let's just clear it. And she had the sciatic pain for years. She couldn't play tennis anymore, or pickleball. We were in the villages. She couldn't play pickleball. Right there within minutes, like literally not even probably 3 minutes, we did a tapping session, huge crying in front of everyone. I said, are you open to like just letting it out? Huge session, crying, pain went away. She came back because I was running my own groups, the Joyful Living Club, all of these groups that I was speaking at. She came back to me 4 years later and said her pain had never come back after that day. So wow. There's no one answer.
100%. No, I totally get that. And so I guess, and I don't know if this is a fair question, so you can tell me if it's not, but when it comes to that, so what it makes me think of is the other scenario. So do you have, whether it's a system, a program, or is it like part of the program? If you run into a scenario where, because I'm sure I don't know how often you'd run into it, but it exists, obviously. Somebody just had something, like they just had a car accident and they're all jacked up. But, you know, it's only been a week old, let's say. And emotionally, as you talk to them, you realize they're not really holding on to a whole lot of stuff, not as much as most people. Is there something you do to help that person that's not related to the emotion at all? Like, do you have a part as that as well?
Well, I know, yeah, this is kind of another trick question there, Corey, because I'm going to tell you something. There's always emotion attached. Otherwise, we wouldn't be human. And it doesn't matter how big or small. So remember I talked about I have the recognize, release, and restore process. 3 steps. I keep it really simple. It's actually recognize, release, rethink, and restore now that we're flipping our script, because it's all about the way that we think, breaking negative thought habits. But you got to you got to pull these thought weeds, as I call them. And that's the EFT. That's the releasing these old weeds of belief, these old frustrations. If you're in a car accident or you're on a ski slope and you get an accident, you're going to be frustrated, disappointed. Why me? There's always going to be an element of something, and it doesn't have to be huge. So for my release process, I use what they call ACEs, and that's an adverse childhood experience assessment. Okay, and it's used in the world of psychology. Mm-hmm. So it's a known assessment, and it's usually what happens between the ages of 0 and 7. But there's also A's, which are adverse adult experiences that always mimic experiences. Why do we marry our fathers or our mothers? You know, there's always a pattern, because the younger version of us always wants to heal a relationship that wasn't healed as a child. Subconscious. And I don't want to get into those layers, but I do with my clients because it's a better way to understand what's really happening. But so I use this assessment, and I call it an emotional plaque assessment. Where could the emotional plaque start building up? So it's a very tangible assessment for somebody to go through, and yes or no, yes or no. And it could be one thing out of 10 questions that happened at the perfect time that was the game changer that caused everything. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to be on the front line to walk around with PTSD. You could be sitting at a kitchen table thinking your life is great, and your parents announce they're getting divorced. And then you were eating pasta and or something, and you're allergic to that food now because it had such a profound effect on everything. I've found this before with my clients. They have allergies to food, and it was because at that moment, it was so traumatic that the body responded that this is toxic, and that has been carried on until we get to that root and heal. Mm-hmm. Did that answer your question, or did I go?
No, it totally did. So I understand you're saying that basically you always work on releasing something because there's always something that's there, whether it's big or small.
We brush our teeth, right? Even though we don't have, plaque buildup in our teeth, because I call it EFT, or this process, the dental floss for emotional plaque. That's what this is. And so sometimes we just need a big cleaning, right? Because we haven't flossed in a while. So we go to the dentist. We have this big painful clearing, even though EFT, my process is never painful because I always keep it light. And you're like, oh, wow, that was that. It wasn't such a big deal. But when you keep recognizing, releasing, and restoring, recognizing, then you're keeping that plaque a bay. You're just being self-aware. You're becoming now a creator. You're becoming more intentional in the thoughts that you think. And then the law of attraction, the universe starts to respond clearly to what it is that you want in your life. So not only does physical pain start to dissipate, but the life that you want to create becomes more abundant. The relationships become more abundant. The relationship between you and you becomes more abundant. And you start seeing like all of these things start showing up because you're now intentionally creating your life, and it's not happening to you,
it's happening for you.
Yes, with you. You're a co-creator.
Happening with you, then, not to you, but with you. So Ilyse Rothman, this has been an absolute pleasure. I know we have to wind down just based on the scope of days and what's coming up for me next, and probably you as well, but I guess a couple of final questions. One is, if people are, whether it's they're in pain now, physically and likely emotionally, or they just know it's time for them to floss the plaque as well. If that's what they're looking for, I guess the first part to the question is, where would you send them? Like, how would they connect with you? Would it be just on Facebook through here, or where would you send them or direct them?
Right. So anybody who feels stuck in their story right now, I think that's a great way to say it. Do you feel stuck in your story right now and you just don't know how to get out, right? Whether the story is chronic pain for years, whether the story is a relationship or a marriage that's not working, whether feeling stuck in your story is that you don't feel like you're enough, whatever that feeling stuck in your story is, that they could always reach out to me at IlyseRothman.com. My name's up here, so that's my website. Every Friday right now, I'm on Flip Your Script on the bLU Talks virtual stage, and I host the Flip Your Script Friday. So you can reach out and message me there. I'm also Flip Your Script with Ilyse Rothman on Facebook. So, if you Google Ilyse Rothman, you'll find me. And I do want to plug this because I'm really super excited. And I know you were on Wake Up to the Vibe with Joe Altieri also, but I was just invited to host a weekly talk show on Wake Up to the Vibe, which is a live broadcast network on Facebook. And it's going to be the Yum Life Happy Hour. And as I said, Yum Life is my umbrella company. And I built it because I've always loved to create brands anyway. I'm a creator. But a lot of my clients and people that I would speak to would come up afterwards. And really what I was recognizing, that anything that we do want to be or have is because we really are looking for more yum-filled moments. More moments that just make us say, yum, right? We just want the umami of life. And so I thought, I would like to live the yum life. Wouldn't everyone want to live the Yum Life where your possibilities are endless and you're growing a life you love? So it's called the Yum Life Happy Hour, and all the guests that are going to come on, it's a lighthearted coffee chat for an hour before the weekend, and it's all about the best that life has to offer. People who are living their best lives, sharing what they're doing in their lives, and just really showcasing that with the right ingredients and the right passion and inspiration, we can really create anything that we want in our lives, no matter what's going on.
Well, all I have to say to that is yum.
Yum. Oh, and then there's one other thing. So there's a free Flip Your Script guide on IlyseRothman.com. So if you go to IlyseRothman.com, I totally recommend downloading the Flip Your Script e-guide to the Growing an Abundant, Rich Life You Love. So you'll understand a little bit more about what Flip Your Script is. And then it'll also guide you into the bands and an experience that I've created as well. But that's the first step. It's a free download. It's awesome. It's simple. I like to keep things simple, but it's the Flip Your Script e-guide, and it's at IlyseRothman.com.
Awesome. Well, Ilyse Rothman, as I said, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'll circle back and check out for comments. I noticed some on my main page, and I've been kind of manning two sides here, the interview and also trying to see in the back scenes in case we had different questions I should tackle. So, Ilyse, this has been an absolute pleasure, as I mentioned. Of course, you're doing the Flip Your Script Friday, so we'll be back next week with you interviewing somebody special and probably.
Yes, and actually, I just got the response. I should let you know who it is right now. It's Kelly Woodhouse, and Farladu. I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
She pronounced it Falardo.
Falardo. I'm so excited. I know she's worked with you on Amplifier on the bLU Talks virtual stage for Amplify Your Message, and she helps the authors get their stories out. And so I'm super excited to have Kelly as a guest next week on Flip Your Script Friday, and I'll get you some more information out on that. Corey, thank you so much for showing up and letting me be on the other side and share a little bit more about what I do. And anybody who wants to just have a conversation or chat with me and feels like challenged with something going on in their life, just reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation and see if there's something that we can do together to help you tap into your best life.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Ilyse. And I thought it was about time we showcased you. And so what I would say is everything you said, and then on top of that, if somebody, because maybe they're not, like I said, we talked about it earlier, maybe from their perspective, they don't realize the power of releasing. They don't realize they need to release emotionally. So what I would say, even if they're in physical pain and they don't think there's another cause, to at least reach out to you.
Yes, because you know what? It gets stuck. We don't know what's happening in the hard drive of our computer, but when it starts to buffer, right, and it's not something that's software related, we have a subconscious hard drive that we don't even know the stuff is in there. I promise you, you'll be surprised why you're buffering. I call it, disease or struggle or anything chronic is buffering. You're buffering.
100%. So with that, Ilyse, I applaud you. I thank you. I adore you. I honor you. And thank you for showing up, being here. And I'll be watching like everybody else next week as you take back over the mantle. And then also watching your new show on the Wake Up Network as well.
August 21st is going to be the first episode. So I'm excited. We'll see how it unfolds. I know it'll be fun. And I'm all about really having fun, ultimately helping people get rid of whatever's holding them from having fun.
Wow. So you're hosting 2 shows next Friday then?
Yes, every Friday. So 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern, it will be the Young Life Happy Hour, and 1 to 1:30 will be Flip Your Script Friday. So it's my media day.
Awesome, my friend. Well, keep on crushing it. Thank you so much. We'll be back, of course, in September with the big virtual event. In the interim, make sure to check out every Friday and also reach out to Ilyse. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much, Ilyse.
You're welcome. Wait, one more thing, and we always forget this, that I'm always available to come on speak on somebody, as a guest. I love chatting as well. So I'm not stuck on being a host all the time. I love it, and I love meeting new people, but I'm also available to speak as a speaker, to come in and talk about how thoughts matter and flip your script. And also to, as on podcasts, hey, I'm available as well. So I think that, I just want to let people know that.
Yeah, for sure. And video interviews. I mean,
of course. Yeah.
At the end of the day, if somebody's looking to interview somebody with a lot of great knowledge, Ilyse is your person. So
exactly.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Corey.
Well, very cool stuff. Thank you so much, Ilyse. And it's funny when you do that each time, I think of the Columbo thing. Columbo, when he used to say, just one more thing. So
that's it. We're good now.
Yeah, we're 100% good. Thank you so much, Ilyse. Have an amazing day. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.